When the ground disappears. Lily could still taste the bitterness of the coffee she had drunk that morning. Not because the coffee was bad, but because everything that day had a different weight, as if the air was denser, heavier on her shoulders. She was sitting at her usual table near the window of the small restaurant where she had worked as manager for almost 10 years. The morning light streamed in softly, illuminating the empty tables that would soon be filled with hurried customers, noisy children, and elderly people who came more for the conversation than the food. Lily loved that place. Every scratch on the wood of the chairs, every stain on the counter, every laugh that echoed between the walls told a story that she knew by heart. But that morning, something was different. His cell phone vibrated on the table. It was a message from Olivia, her assistant and best friend. "Did you see the email? We need to talk. Urgent." Lily felt her stomach tighten. She opened the corporate email and read the first few lines. Administrative restructuring, new protocols, performance evaluation, and at the end, a sentence that seemed to have been written just for her. Starting Monday, Donald Rivers will take over as regional supervisor. Donald. The name alone was enough to make her heart race, but not with excitement. Donald was the kind of man who would walk into a room and suck all the good energy out of it. He was ambitious, calculating, and for the past 2 years he had done everything he could to outshine Lily whenever he could. In meetings, he would interrupt his speeches with comments laced with sarcasm. In his reports, he always found a way to belittle his achievements, and now he would be her boss. Lily took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She knew this wasn't just an administrative change, it was a strategy. Donald had spent months building alliances, making promises, planting doubts about her capabilities, and now he had done it. Olivia walked in through the back door, her eyes wide and her hands shaking slightly. She didn't need to say anything. Lily already knew. "What are we going to do?" Olivia asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. Lily looked out the window, watching the people passing by on the street, each with their own problems, their own silent battles. She thought about giving up, resigning, looking for another job. But then, something inside her refused to give in. It wasn't pride, it was something deeper, more true. It was the certainty that she belonged there, and that no one, not even Donald, could take that away from her. "We keep doing what we've always done," Lily replied, with a calmness that surprised even herself. "We take care of people, do our jobs well, and don't let anyone make us feel less than we are." Olivia nodded, but fear was still etched on her face. Lily knew the next few weeks would be difficult, but she also knew something Donald had not yet learned. Humiliating someone might make you feel powerful for a moment, but it never makes you strong. And Lily had something Donald never would. She had roots. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends. Days of silence and small battles. Monday arrived like a runaway train. Lily woke up earlier than usual, even though she didn't need to. She stood in front of the mirror for a few minutes, observing her tired eyes, the fine lines around them that seemed to have appeared overnight. She wondered when everything had gotten so complicated. When did doing what she loved turn into a silent war? The restaurant opened at 7 in the morning, but Lily always arrived at 6. I liked the silence before the rush, the smell of fresh coffee brewing, the sound of chairs being arranged. It was in these moments that she felt she still had control over something. But that morning, when she opened the door, Donald was already there. He was sitting at the main table in an impeccable suit, working on his laptop with the posture of someone who already owned the place. "Good morning, Lily," he said, without looking up from the screen. His voice was polite but cold, like a blade coated in ice. "Good morning," she replied, forcing her voice to be firm. She walked past him and straight to the kitchen, where Olivia was already preparing the first orders of the day. "He's been here since 5:30, Olivia whispered, her eyes wide. He's already changed the table layout, asked to review all of last week's supplier orders, and said he'll hold a meeting with the entire team at noon. Lily felt her chest tighten. She knew Donald wasn't there to help. He was there to show her who was boss, to make it clear that she was now dependent on him. And the worst part of it was that part of her just wanted to give in, to accept that maybe he was right, that maybe she wasn't good enough. But then she heard Seaman's voice coming from the hall. Seaman was the restaurant's oldest cook, a black man in his late 60s who had golden hands and an even bigger heart. He had taught Lily almost everything she knew about food, about people, about life. "Where's our boss?" he asked, his voice strong and warm as always. Lily walked out of the kitchen and found Seaman with a wide smile on his face, holding a tray of freshly made pancakes. "I made your favorites," he said, winking at her. "I thought you might need a little help today." Lily felt her eyes sting, but managed to hold back the tears. She hugged Seaman quickly, feeling the strength of that simple gesture, that reminder that she was not alone. Donald watched everything from the table, his eyes narrow, calculating. "Lily, I need you to put together a presentation on last quarter's numbers for today's meeting," he said, his voice clipped. "I want to understand how you have been running this place." The tone was clear. He wasn't asking, he was questioning. Lily took a deep breath. "Of course," she replied, keeping her voice calm. "The numbers are all in the system. I can prepare a presentation by 11. Donald nodded, but he didn't look satisfied. He wanted to see her fail. He wanted her to stumble over her words, to show weakness. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of requests, phone calls, and minor crises that Lily resolved with her usual efficiency. But there was something different in the air. The employees were quieter, more tense. They felt the change, Donald's presence hovering over everything like a shadow. At noon, everyone gathered in the makeshift meeting room at the back of the restaurant. Donald was standing at the head of the table while Lily and the others sat down. He started talking about efficiency, about cost-cutting, about the need for drastic changes. Each word was like a needle being slowly pushed into the skin. Lily listened in silence, her hands folded on the table, her face serene. But inside something was breaking. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was a deep pain, the pain of seeing something you built with your own hands being dismantled by someone who never really cared. Donald ended the meeting with a cold smile. "I hope to count on everyone's cooperation," he said, looking directly at Lily, "especially from our dear manager, who I'm sure will surprise us." The irony in his voice was clear. Lily didn't answer. She just nodded and left the room. When he reached the bathroom, he locked the door and leaned against the sink, taking deep breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and whispered to herself, "You are stronger than this." But at that moment, she wasn't so sure. When stories start to appear, the following days were a succession of small humiliations that Donald carried out with the precision of a surgeon. He never shouted, never lost his composure. But every comment, every email, every look carried the weight of a silent accusation. On Tuesday, he called Lily in to review the menu. They sat together at an empty table, their plates spread out in front of them. Donald tasted each dish with a critical expression, jotting things down in a small notebook that never left his hands. "It's good," he said after tasting the beef stew that was the restaurant's flagship dish. "But it's not excellent, and if we want to compete with the new establishments in the region, good isn't enough." Lily felt her blood boil. That stew was Seaman's recipe, perfected over decades, loved by hundreds of loyal customers. But she didn't say anything. He just wrote down the comment and continued listening. Donald continued, "I've also noticed that you've been allowing employees to take very long breaks, which is affecting productivity." Lily interrupted him, her voice firm. "Breaks are within the law, and our employees work most efficiently when they are treated with respect." Donald smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Respect is important, Lily, but results are even more important. And so far, the results I'm seeing aren't impressive. Lily pressed her lips together, swallowing the words she wanted to say. She knew that any reaction would be used against her. On Thursday, Donald called a surprise meeting with suppliers. Lily only found out when one of them called asking if she confirmed the changes to the contracts. "What changes?" she asked, her heart racing. The supplier explained that Donald had renegotiated prices and quantities without consulting her. Lily hung up the phone and went straight to his desk. "Donald, we need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice controlled. He looked up lazily, as if she were an inconvenient interruption. "About what?" "Regarding changes to contracts. You cannot do this without consulting me. I am the manager of this restaurant." Donald leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You were the manager, Lily. Now you answer to me, and I decide what's best for this establishment." The words fell like a hammer. Lily felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. But she wasn't going to let him see that. "I will send a report to the regional board," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Donald shrugged. "Feel free. I'm sure they'll agree with me." Lily walked out of there feeling like she had been punched in the stomach. She spent the rest of the day on autopilot, smiling at customers, solving problems, pretending everything was fine. But Olivia noticed. She always noticed. That night, after the restaurant closed, Olivia sat next to Lily in the empty kitchen. "You can't let him do this to you," Olivia said, her voice soft but firm. Lily shook her head, her eyes fixed on the table. "And what can I do, Olivia? He has the power, he has the board's support, he has everything." Olivia held her hand. "But he doesn't have what you have." "What?" Lily asked, her voice breaking. "People," Olivia replied. "Everyone here loves you, Lily. Everyone knows who you really are, and that's worth more than any position." Lily felt the tears finally escape. She had held on so much for so long that when the dam broke, it was like everything collapsed at once. Olivia hugged her silently, letting her cry. At that moment, Lily realized something important. She was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of proving your worth, tired of being strong all the time. But she also realized something else. She wasn't fighting alone. Zaman appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might need this," he said with a gentle smile. He sat with them, and the 3 of them sat there in silence, just existing together in that space that had witnessed so many good and bad moments. "You know, Lily," Zaman said after a while, "I've seen a lot of people like Donald come through here. People who think that power is the same thing as leadership, who think that humiliating others makes them great." He took a sip of tea and continued. "But you know what I've learned in all these years? People like that never last. Because in the end, what sustains a place like this isn't numbers or strategies, it's people who truly care." Lily looked at Zaman, then at Olivia. For the first time in days, she felt something like hope. It wasn't a big, noisy hope. She was small, shy, like a flame struggling not to go out. But it was there, and maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. The next morning, when Lily arrived at the restaurant, she found a note taped to the office door. "Donald's era, meeting at 9. Aboun. Don't be late." Lily put the note in her pocket and took a deep breath. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew she wouldn't give up. Not yet. Looking for answers in the wrong place. The 9 o'clock meeting was worse than Lily had imagined. Donald was not alone. There were 2 men in suits waiting in the room, both with leather briefcases and serious expressions. Lily recognized one of them. It was Marcus Weber, regional director, the man who had the power to decide the future of any employee. "Sit down, Lily," Donald said, pointing to the empty chair. She sat down, her hands freezing, her heart pounding in her chest. Marcus opened a folder and began talking about performance metrics, declining customer reviews, and delayed financial reports. Each word was like a stone being placed on his shoulders. Lily tried to defend herself, explaining that the numbers were within average, that the reviews were positive until a few months ago, but Donald constantly interrupted her, always with a comment that twisted her words, that made everything seem worse than it was. At the end of the meeting, Marcus closed the folder and looked directly at her. "Lily, we're going to put you on a 30-day evaluation period, during which time Donald will be your direct supervisor and will evaluate your performance." The words fell like a sentence. 30 days to prove that she still deserved to be there. 30 days under the relentless gaze of someone who wanted to see her fail. Lily left the meeting feeling as if she were walking a tightrope over an abyss. She spent the next few days trying to be perfect. "I arrived early, left late, reviewed every detail 3 times, but no matter what she did, Donald always found something wrong. The coffee was too weak. The tables were not clean enough. A customer complained about the service. Every little problem was magnified, documented, turned into evidence against her." Late one night, Lily was alone in her office, going through piles of papers, trying to find something, anything, that she could use to her advantage. She opened the old files, searching for reports, emails, records that would prove her worth. And that's when she found something strange. There were discrepancies in the financial reports for the last 6 months. Small differences, nothing too obvious, but enough to make the numbers look worse than they actually were. Lily frowned, her heart racing. She took the original reports she had submitted and compared them with the versions that were in the system. Someone had changed the numbers, and she had a strong suspicion who. The next morning, Lily looked for Olivia and Simon. The 3 gathered in the kitchen before work started. "Someone manipulated the reports," Lily said, showing the documents. "Look here, in my originals, the 3rd quarter profit was 15% higher, but in the system it appears as stable." Simon picked up the papers and examined them carefully. "This is serious, Lily. Very serious." Olivia was pale. "Do you think it was Donald?" Lily did not respond immediately. She wanted to be sure before making accusations. But deep down, she knew. Donald had access to the system. He had motives, and he was smart enough to make it look natural. "We need more proof," Lily said, her voice firm. "I can't go to the board with just this. They'll say I'm making excuses." In the following days, Lily transformed into a silent detective. She reviewed every document, every email, every system access record. Olivia helped her, staying late to dig through old files. Simon kept his ears open, listening to every conversation Donald had on the phone. But the more they searched, the more frustrating it became. Donald was careful, meticulous. If he was behind this, he had covered his tracks well. Lily began to doubt herself. What if she was wrong? What if the numbers really were bad and she just didn't want to admit it? What if it was all just paranoia from someone who was losing control? One afternoon, Lily was so exhausted that she almost gave up. She was sitting in the empty parking lot, inside her car, her hands on the steering wheel, staring into space. Maybe it was time to accept defeat. Maybe it was time to look for another job, another place, another life. The cell phone rang. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're not crazy. Keep looking. Check the backup server." Lily stared at the screen, her heart racing. Who was it? How did this person know what she was doing? She replied, "Who are you?" But there was no answer. Lily stood there for long minutes, deciding what to do. Then she got out of the car and walked back to the restaurant. He waited until everyone left, until Donald comes out with his victorious smile and his leather briefcase. When the place was empty and quiet, she went to the backup server in the small closet in the back. It was an old system that almost no one used anymore. Lily turned on the old computer and started searching. And then she found it. Files that had been deleted from the main system but were still there, hidden. Donald's emails to suppliers, negotiating contracts with inflated prices, messages to management, raising doubts about Lily's performance, and worst of all, clear evidence that he had altered financial reports to make the restaurant appear less profitable than it actually was. Lily felt a mixture of relief and horror. She was right, but now she had an even more difficult decision ahead of her. What to do with this information? If she reported Donald, there would be war. He wouldn't take it lying down, and she didn't know if the board would believe her. But if she did nothing, he would continue to destroy everything she had built. Lily copied all the files to a flash drive and turned off the computer. When she left the restaurant that night, the sky was full of stars. She looked up, searching the stars for some kind of answer. But the universe remained silent. The answer would have to come from within her. The unexpected ally. Lily couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the flash drive tucked away in the nightstand drawer like a bomb about to explode. She knew she had enough evidence to take down Donald, but he also knew that this could destroy his own career in the process. Donald had connections. He had power, and he wouldn't hesitate to drag her name through the mud if he felt he was being threatened. The next morning, Lily arrived at the restaurant with dark circles under her eyes and a throbbing headache. Olivia looked at her worriedly, but didn't say anything. The day started like any other. Customers, orders, small problems that needed quick solutions. But Lily was on autopilot, her mind constantly returning to that flash drive, to that impossible decision. It was in the middle of the afternoon that everything changed. A man entered the restaurant, tall, with grey hair and thin-rimmed glasses. He wore a simple coat and carried a worn backpack. There was something familiar about him, but Lily couldn't put her finger on it. He sat at a table in the corner and ordered just a coffee. Lily was so distracted that she didn't even notice when he waved at her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're Lily, aren't you?" She stepped closer, frowning. "Yes, can I help you?" The man smiled sadly. "My name is Thomas. I used to work here many years ago. I was the manager before you." Lily felt something stir in her memory. She had heard of Thomas, the legendary manager who had turned that small restaurant into a place known and loved by the entire community. But he had left suddenly. No one knew exactly why. "I know what's happening to you," Thomas said, lowering his voice. "And I know who Donald Rivers is better than anyone." Lily sat up, her heart racing. "Were you the one who sent me that message?" Thomas nodded. "I still have friends who work at the headquarters. They told me you were being stalked, and I couldn't stay silent." "Why not?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas took a deep breath, his eyes growing distant for a moment. "Because Donald did the same thing to me 10 years ago. He came in here as a supervisor, started planting doubts about my work, manipulated numbers, turned people against me. And when I finally confronted the board, he had already built such a solid narrative that no one believed me." Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. "What happened to you?" "I was fired," Thomas said, the pain still evident in his voice. "I lost my reputation, my career, and it took me years to rebuild my life." Lily felt tears burn her eyes. "So there is no hope. He always wins." Thomas shook his head. "No. This time it will be different, because you have something I didn't have." "What?" "Evidence," he said, discreetly pointing to her bag where she kept the flash drive. "And you have people who believe in you. I can see it in everyone's eyes here." Lily looked around the restaurant. Simon was in the kitchen, humming as he prepared a dish. Olivia arranged the tables with her usual care. The other employees worked diligently, even though they knew their jobs could be at risk. Thomas continued, "But you have to be smart. Donald is dangerous when he feels cornered, and he will try to turn everything against you." "What should I do?" Lily asked, her voice thick with desperation. Thomas leaned forward. "First, you don't go to the boardroom alone. You need witnesses, people who can corroborate your story." Second, you document everything he does from now on, every inappropriate comment, every questionable decision. And third, you stay calm. Don't let him see that you know what he did. What? Lily nodded, absorbing every word. And you, she asked, why are you helping me now? Thomas smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because I couldn't defend myself then, but maybe I can help you do what I should have done. And because places like this, people like you, are too rare to be destroyed by people like Donald. He stood up, leaving some notes on the table to pay for the coffee. Before leaving, he handed over a card with a phone number. Call me if you need help. I know some people in internal audit who might be able to help. And Lily, he said, already at the door. Remember, you are not fighting this alone. Thomas left, leaving Lily sitting there, clutching that little card like a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, she felt something different. It wasn't full trust. It was not absolute certainty. But it was a spark of possibility. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could win that battle. Olivia walked closer, seeing the changed expression on Lily's face. Who was that man? Lily looked at her, and for the first time in days, she smiled genuinely. Someone who understands. When everything falls apart, the next few days were a roller coaster of emotions. Lily followed Thomas's advice to the letter. She began documenting everything, every interaction with Donald, every strange decision he made. She discreetly recorded meetings, took notes on conversations, and kept copies of all emails. And most importantly, she started talking to the other employees. She discovered that she was not alone in her distrust. Maria, the young waitress who worked on weekends, said that Donald had made inappropriate comments about her appearance. James, on the night shift, revealed that Donald had threatened to cut his hours if he didn't vote in favor of the proposed changes. Each story was a piece of a larger puzzle, a pattern of abuse of power, of manipulation, of systematic intimidation. Lily gathered everything into a dossier, working late every night, organizing evidence, preparing her defense. But Donald was no idiot. He began to notice that something was different. Lily was calmer, more confident, less likely to be shaken by his comments, and that irritated him deeply. On Tuesday of the third week of the review, Donald called an emergency meeting. All employees were called, even those who were off duty. When Lily entered the room, she felt the air heavy, charged with tension. Donald stood, arms crossed, a grim expression on his face. Beside him stood Marcus Weber, the regional director, and a woman Lily didn't recognize, dressed formally with an internal audit badge. Lily felt her stomach churn. Something was very wrong. "Sit down," Donald ordered, his voice cold as ice. Everyone obeyed in silence. Donald began speaking. "In recent days, it has been brought to my attention that there are serious discrepancies in the financial records of this establishment." Lily felt her blood run cold. He continued, "After a preliminary investigation, we found that funds were misappropriated, reports were falsified, and there is evidence of administrative misconduct." The silence in the room was deafening. Donald looked directly at Lily, and in that moment she saw the trap closing, and all the evidence points to the person who had unrestricted access to the financial systems, the person responsible for managing this restaurant for the past few years. "Lily, you are being formally charged with embezzlement and document forgery." The words fell like bombs. Lily felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her feet. "That's not true," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I never embezzled anything. I never falsified anything." The auditor opened a folder and began presenting documents. Bank transfers to unknown accounts, reports changed, fake receipts. Everything seemed to undeniably incriminate her. Lily stared at the documents, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. And then she realized these were the same documents she had found on the backup server, the documents that proved Donald's manipulation. But now, somehow, they had been altered again to make it look like she was the culprit. Donald had planned everything. He knew she had found out and had set a counter-trap. Simon stood up, his voice thundering through the room. "That's a lie. Lily would never do something like that. We all know who she is." Other employees began to murmur in agreement. Olivia was pale, her hands shaking. Marcus raised his hand, asking for silence. "Lily, these are very serious charges. You will have the opportunity to formally defend yourself, but until the investigation is complete, you are suspended without pay." The words were like stabs. Lily looked around the room, seeing faces she had known for years, people who trusted her, who depended on her, and now everyone was watching her being accused of treason. She felt hot tears stream down her face, but she didn't try to hide them. "I didn't do it," she said, her voice breaking. "I swear on everything I love, I didn't do any of that." Donald remained silent, but there was a small smile at the corner of his mouth, a smile of victory. Marcus handed Lily an envelope. "You have 48 hours to present your formal defense. Until then, please hand over your keys and leave the premises." Lily took the envelope with trembling hands. She looked at Olivia, who had tears streaming down her face. He looked at Simon, who was clenching his fists in impotent rage. She looked at every person in that room, people she had cared for, protected, defended. And then she looked at Donald. Their eyes met, and in that moment she saw something in him that frightened her. It wasn't just ambition or cruelty, it was pleasure. He was enjoying it. Lily stood up, put the envelope in her bag, and walked to the door. When she reached the threshold, she turned around one last time. "The truth always comes out," she said, her voice low but clear. "Always." And then she left, leaving behind the place that had been her home for over 10 years. When she got to the car, she finally broke down. He cried until he had no more tears. He cried for the injustice, for the pain, for the fear of what would come next. But when the tears finally dried, something began to grow inside her. It wasn't giving up, it was determination. Donald had made a mistake. He had underestimated how much she was willing to fight, and now she was going to show him that humiliating someone can make you look strong, but it never makes you invincible. The truth that no one expected Lily spent the next 24 hours locked in her apartment. She spread all the documents across the living room table, the flash drive plugged into her laptop, trying to find something, anything that could save her. Donald had been too thorough. He had manipulated the file so cleverly that it now looked like she was the culprit. It was almost midnight when the phone rang. It was Thomas. "I heard what happened," he said, his voice heavy with worry. "Lily, are you okay?" She couldn't answer immediately, her throat tight. "He destroyed me, Thomas. He turned everything against me, and now it looks like I'm the criminal." Thomas was silent for a moment. Then I said, "Lily, I need to tell you something I should have told you from the beginning." "What?" "Donald isn't doing this alone. He never was." Lily felt her blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" Thomas took a deep breath. "When I was working at the restaurant, I discovered that there was a bigger scheme going on. Donald was just the tip of the spear. He worked for someone higher up in the hierarchy, someone who benefited from the financial diversions he created." "Who?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus Weber, the regional director." Lily's world stopped. Marcus was at the meeting today. He was judging me, and the whole time he was complicit? Thomas confirmed. "They've been working together for years. Donald manipulates the numbers, makes it look like the restaurants are losing money, and Marcus approves layoffs and the sale of overpriced equipment to companies they control, splitting the profits between them." Lily felt a mixture of horror and revelation. So it was never just about humiliating me, it was about money. Not exactly, said Thomas. "In your case, it was about both. You were starting to ask questions, you were going through old documents, you were getting too close to the truth, so they needed to get you out of the way before you found out everything." Lily stood up, pacing back and forth across the room. "How do you know all this?" "Because I found out too," Thomas said, his voice thick with regret. "And when I tried to report it, they destroyed me first. I didn't have enough evidence, and they made me look like a problematic and dishonest employee." "That's why you left," Thomas confirmed. "I've spent the last 10 years trying to gather evidence, trying to find a way to expose them, but they're very careful. They always cover their tracks." Lily felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the people who had been harmed, all the employees who had lost their jobs, all the restaurants that had closed because of this scheme. "Thomas," she said, her voice steady for the first time in days, "I have the files from the backup server. I have the original transfers, the emails, everything." Thomas was silent for a moment. "So you have more than I ever had. But Lily, you need to understand, if you go after them, they will try to destroy you in every way possible." "I know," said Lily. "But I can't let this go. I can't let them keep doing this to other people." Thomas sighed, and Lily could hear something like pride in his voice. "Then you're going to need help, real help, not just from me." Lily thought of Simon, of Olivia, of all the employees who trusted her. "I have help," she said. "I have people who believe in me." Thomas was silent for a moment longer. Then he said, "There's one more thing you need to know. There's an external auditor who's been investigating irregularities in the region for months. She hasn't found any concrete evidence yet, but if you take everything you have to her, she might be able to help." "Who is she?" "Her name is Sarah Chen. She works for the main office, and she is incorruptible. I have tried to contact her before, but I didn't have enough evidence." Thomas sent Sarah's contact information to Lily. When they hung up, Lily looked at the documents spread out on the desk. For the first time in days, she didn't just see an accusation, she saw a map that led straight to the heart of corruption. And she finally understood. Donald didn't humiliate her because she was weak. He humiliated her because she was dangerous, because she cared too much, because she asked questions, because she represented everything he couldn't control. And now, she had a choice. She could accept defeat, let them destroy her in silence, or she could fight, not just for herself, but for everyone who came before and everyone who would come after. Lily looked at her watch. She had less than 24 hours to build her case, less than 24 hours to change everything. She picked up the phone and started making calls. First to Olivia, then to Simon, then to every employee she trusted. The fight was just beginning, but this time she wasn't fighting alone, and this time she had the truth on her side. What really matters. 3 months later, Lily was standing in front of the restaurant. The morning sun illuminated the freshly painted facade, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted through the open door. Sarah Chen had done her job. The evidence Lily presented triggered a full-scale investigation that exposed Marcus and Donald's entire scheme. Both were fired and faced criminal charges. Lily was cleared of all charges. More than that, she was promoted to regional director. But what really mattered to her wasn't the title, it was the fact that Simon was still in the kitchen, humming as he prepared his famous pancakes. It was Olivia's smile when she welcomed customers. It was knowing that no employee would be humiliated or exploited again. Thomas appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thinking about the past?" he asked. Lily shook her head. No future. She had learned something precious. Humiliating someone can make you seem powerful for a moment. But protecting, caring, and fighting for what is right, that is what makes you truly strong. and that strength no one could ever take away from her. Have you ever experienced something similar? Leave your story in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends.